Hello there, everybody. Welcome to BLS019 Review and Refactor, the new series in BEEMAN.DEV Livestream. And today I'm happy to announce two guests, Natalia and Diego. Thank you for joining the show. Maybe we can start out with a small introduction. Natalia, if you can go ahead, tell us where you're from and how you got into coding.
Sure. My name is Natalia Hashimoto. I'm from Honduras, but I live in Colombia, in Medellin. I work at Berkeley as software developer. There I'm used to work with Angular and Ruby on Rails. And how I started? Well, like maybe 5 years ago, my husband and I started a company, and it requires a lot of development. And we have to learn because we don't have like money to pay any other software developer to build our application. So that's how everything started.
Very cool, very cool. And your husband is Diego, who is also here on the stream. For those of you not aware, they actually sent from the same screen, so from the same room. They're doing this live. So cool. Thanks a lot, Diego. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Okay, this is Ortiz. I'm from Bogota, Colombia, currently living in Medellin. I started working in this world 5 years ago with a little bit of PHP. Then I moved to Ruby, and the last 2 years I have been working only with Angular as a main framework language. That's it.
Very cool, very cool. So Diego reached out to me when I sent out a tweet, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, about my new show, Review and Refactor, and where I want to help people convert their app to Formally. And Diego reached out, like, we have an app and we'd love to give it a go. So that's what we're going to do today. I think it may be nice to take a look at the app. And so if Diego can share the screen, you were already sharing. If you can show the app on the screen, and then Natalia can maybe walk you through it and show us a little bit, like, what is it about, and why did you start working on it?
We want to see the UI or only the code?
No, I think first the UI, so we have a little bit an idea of what we're working with.
Okay, let me go for that.
Yeah, awesome. Because Natalia, it was your idea, right?
It was, I think, both idea.
Okay. So what is the app about?
So the application is a learning management system. It's a software that's made for school administrators, so they can create students, parents, teachers, and upload content here, so they can use this content as instead of using books in the school. So this started because in this year we have the idea of helping my mom's school to become something more virtual or more updated, and it gave us like a good chance because of the pandemic and everything. They start using more this kind of applications or stuff to try to do something with the kids. So as you can see, we can upload resources, information about a topic or a subject itself. The application is in Spanish because it's made for Spanish kids or people who's in a normal school in Latin America.
Right.
And I think that's it.
Awesome.
Right,
and this is sorry?
Go ahead. Right now it's just the MVP, what we have built.
Right. So front end's using, looks like Angular material, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the back end, what are you using on the back end?
Ruby on Rails.
Ruby, cool. Awesome. Very cool. So learning management. And this is for the school in Honduras initially.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I think a mobile first approach there, it makes a lot of sense, because I imagine a lot of people will initially use the mobile to do this.
I forgot to mention that our kind of worries the mobile design first. We also support desktop, but we know our kids just use the phone to do everything. So
Yeah. Right. Okay. So you have yeah, it's responsive basically. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Let's dive right into it. I think so. Maybe we can take a brief look at the code and see. Maybe you already have some pain points with forms that you can say like, okay, this is where we had to do a lot of things duplicate, or I'm not sure. Otherwise, we can start right and start adding formally and converting the first helpers, which I think is a good thing. So, were you already aware that formally existed? Did you consider it at some point, or was it something that new that came across?
I think we can start with something easy, like the login part, and then we can move to some forms that handles like a lot of arrays.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's a common one. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
usually the basic forms are easy, and then we face bigger forms. We start thinking like, no, why do I have to do this way?
Yeah.
So
I think that's a very common pattern. So this is one input. It's a username field here, and we see it goes from line 6 to line 617. So it's 11 fields. It's for one form. And then I think one of the benefits you have here is that you're using material, so it already has like things like validation, colors for validation built in. But what I personally see as one of the biggest issues with Angular reactive forms, as they are, it's like an incremental increase of template for each form field. You have like 10 lines of code for a template, plus the logic on the that you're seeing right here, where you have to define the form group. In this case, it's login form, and then you have to build the form, and you have to basically, what I see, it's a super nice thing for a low level, but for a higher level where you just want to express, hey, give me a form with this field, I think it's way too much. So cool, let's go ahead. Let's open the terminal here, and I think we can just ng add formally, but I need to figure out what the correct syntax is. So ng add is sure. And then I need to figure out, because I generally do it manually. Okay, you can say at ngx dash formally. So start out and ng add at ngx slash formally is the package name. Let me dump it in the private chat real quick.
Yep.
So that'll be that command.
Yeah, let me paste that.
So this is the most straightforward way to start it. And instead of UI team bootstrap, we can pick UI team material.
Instead of bootstrap, I'll say material.
Yes, say material. And then this will set it up and install everybody. And meanwhile, we can say hi to our resident visitors here, Abel de la Fuente. Hey, Abel. Nice to see you. Good to have you here. It's nice that I keep on seeing the same people joining the chat and interacting. So what this will do, it will install two packages at ngx formally core and ngx formally material. Okay. And this comes with a whole lot of default inputs. So for instance, a normal input or a text area or a select box, checkbox, radio buttons, all that are supported by default. And you can just use them. And then for the more advanced stuff that you might have, we can take a look at how to add custom fields. So a few days back, I was talking with a friend of mine, and he had a barcode scanner. And they decided to implement it as a form field because a barcode scanner actually is a form field that enters just a number, a series of digits.
Nice.
So this might be interesting. And for those of you who are interested in checking it out, I got some more live content where I built a whole formally integration for Tailwind UI, because Tailwind currently is not supported. And so I built that manually. So cool. While this is waiting, let's see here. So we have the login component, and we have, I think, 2 fields here, username and password. And from what it looks like, you make them read only while loading. That's also an interesting thing. So this is something we need to tackle. But what we can already do, we can already start, while the installation is happening, start building our form component. So how Formly normally works is that you, instead of adding the whole form, you add a field, a Formly form component. You pass in the fields, and you pass in the form. Oh gee, live coding errors.
What happened?
What happened? This is a great question. What happened? It looks like it was. Let's check real quick git status to see if it did add the dependencies to package JSON. So can you run git status? Okay, and it looks like it added those. So what I think happened is that, do you have the dev server running in another tab?
Yep.
I think that might be interacting. Yeah. So I generally start up this one, and then we should see the compilation of these ones happening.
Okay.
So yeah, how it works is you have like one Formly form component, you pass in the fields, you pass in the form control, and then you can do anything you want. So this is a very powerful pattern. And it looks like this now starts. It does not start. Okay.
Let me check.
Let's see.
Yeah. NGX Formly schematics 5.10.10.
Yeah, but is it? But is that the only one? Yeah, it looks like that's the only change, right?
Yeah, it's the only one.
Okay. Let's try and run the same command one more time to see if that magically works now. So just the one I pasted in there. Yeah, the ng-add. Let's add it one more time and change bootstrap for material. Oh, make sure to Control-C. That we add material.
No, bootstrap no. Sorry. Lost material. Yep.
Yeah, okay. And we can see that it already made a change in source app module. So that's something we can look at right now. So let's open the app module. Yes, there you go. Okay, so it right now added bootstrap and material. So we can get rid of line 19 because we don't use this. And we should be able to see this a little bit further down. Yeah, then we have that one. We can get rid of that as well. Okay, cool. And I see a syntax error, a red squiggly line somewhere on the top of the screen. Looks like.
Doesn't find the package yet, I think. No. It's because our linter says that.
Linting rules. Yes, you have strict linting rules. You should be in order. Yeah, very good. Yep. Very cool. Okay, this works, and now it's installing these things. So yeah, you just like any normal module, you load Formly module in the top level of your app. You call for root, and in this case, we say, okay, Formly material module gives us a bunch of inputs that we can use. Field types actually is a better way, and it sets lazy render to true. It should be the default in 6 that it does this, and it has to do with change detection and all that stuff. But
okay.
Yes. So one thing, and let me, so inside our login component, what we can already do is basically define our desired state. So what I generally do on top of the constructor, above the constructor, is add a fields array. So what we can say here is public fields or fields, and we can type this by importing Formly field config. And this should Formly field config and an array of that. Yep, that one. And we can have an array of that. And we can assign it to a new array. And we can start adding our fields. So inside here, we can make objects. And if you like, we can take a quick look at the formally field config. But in general, there's two things important. Key, that is the field of the name of the field. So that's often like login or password. Sorry, I can already see it. Here on line 45, we use username and password. So we can use those keys as the key. So that is how the field type will manifest itself in its model. We'll see this in a little bit. And then for type, we can say that this is of type input, because that's one of the basic types we have. So we have an input username. And what we then want to do is tell it to make it required. So we can add another property here, which is called template options. So inside template options, we add an object, and here we can say required. So this is basically, and this is a Boolean, so you can say required true.
Okay.
And this is that state. And now, if you in the sidebar, in the left-hand side, if you can open the template real quick. The login component template. Okay, so what we see here is that the label is usuario. So this is something that we can pass in as well inside template options. Yep, so this is the label. And then inside template options, so one line down.
Template options.
Yeah. And this might be a bit confusing, like what is a template and when is it a non-template option, but in general, everything that has to do with the layout of your form and the behavior, how it's rendered, goes inside template option. And the other one goes outside. Now, I think, okay, cool. Installation got started. Installation ran, so that's all good. And I think the second field, we can just copy this definition. So copy the whole username definition, and we only have to change a few things, because the key will be password. Yep. And the label will be contraseña. And what we actually want to have happen here is that we have an input, but if we look at the HTML object, its input type is password, right? So it's you have input type text, input type number, and we want to have input type that one, type password. This is also a template options. So the first key here, no, the 34, we're going to keep it in input.
Okay.
That's what we do on line 21 of the template. But inside template options, we can specify, okay, how to render this input, give it type password.
Okay.
Okay, so this gives us two fields, and this should render out now pretty easily. And in order for this to render out, we need to go to our template. And there we can say, let's do it right under initiar session on line 5. You can add a new component, formally-form.
Formally-form.
Yep, and this one should take an input fields, and we can pass in the fields property that you created on the class.
Fields.
And fields inside square brackets, so it gets interpolated. Yep, this should be. So let's take a look at the browser. And I think you shared only one window. It's probably easier if you share the screen, if that's possible.
To share the screen, okay.
So we can switch between browser and
see the screen 1.
Yeah, browser and editor.
No, it's screen 2. Yep, this one.
Okay, let's add this one back here. Very cool. Okay, so if we go back to the login page, my neighbor is starting construction right away at this moment. It's always during my stream. Okay, it's not rendering. Let's take a quick look at the console here. If we don't see any errors, I don't think we do. So what I think happens is that, and let's scroll a bit up to see the first part of the error. Yeah, it doesn't recognize formally form. So we probably need to import the formally module at the login component module. So the module where login component is defined here, and let's import formally module here.
Okay.
Yep, and this should be able to run like this. And if this does build,
Yep.
okay, looks good. Then if we refresh here, I hope to see, nope. Let's check back in the console. I don't think we see any.
Should I remove formally module from the app module?
It should be here, but actually what I always do is end up with like a shared module where you just import your forms all at once, and then that's the one you reuse across your features, which basically your auth is a feature. But this should move, this should work. And yeah, just give it a start. I'm going to say hi to Jeffrey Bos here. Jeffrey from the Dutch Angular community, saying thank you for sharing your knowledge. Well, it's my pleasure, Jeffrey. Jeffrey does the same. I hope to be on their stream in the next year. And we have another awesome comment from Alex Butera. He said that I helped him a lot understanding how to make custom Tailwind formally. I'm very grateful. I'm super happy to share this. And yeah, Formally is an open source project. Otherwise, I probably would apply as developer advocate for Formally because I love it so much. But yeah, this is, I think, one of the issues we have with live coding. So it doesn't seem to recognize this Formally field. But in essence, this is what you need. So you pop in the Formally form component. You tell it which fields to render out, and that should be it, more or less. There's obviously you want to do something with your data.
It was pretty easy, right?
Yeah, if it works, even better. There you go. Okay, it works. Cool. So you see, and let's for a second ignore the styles, but yep, we can see that it now renders out, and we didn't write more than one line of templating. This one line of templating is never going to change. So there's always one line of template, and then the rest is all in your component. Now,
by default, they use already material, right?
Yeah, because you have the material plugin.
Okay.
This is what they use. And I think one of the things that you have in your app is using the outline version from Material UI, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So let me quickly check because I haven't used Material for a little bit. But I think the Material, you can just define that you want to have outline fields. I just need to figure out where the code for this is. So how do you say it? Appearance is outline. Appearance
outline.
Yep. I think you can just set appearance on the template options. So inside, let's say line 28 or 29, add a new one and set appearance to outline. Yep. And maybe you can do it in one and not in the other to see if that makes a difference.
Let's see.
After refreshing, there you go. So, okay, so this works as expected. And if you now do for the same for contraseña, you can see that they actually already start to look like each other, which is pretty nice. And this is how I often start out. So if I want to mimic a field, I obviously want it to work the same. So you can see it took the outline, it added the little asterisk because it's a required field. And second important thing probably for a form, one is that it has fields. Second is that we can capture its data, because without that, there's a little use in having a form. Formally does that by passing in a model. So on line 5 in the template, next to the fields input, you can add another input, and I generally call this model. So this is the property is called model, and I have the same property on my component class. So just call it model. I define it somewhere right there. And you can either call it any, or you can be more fancy, say this is type record of key string with any, but it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
And I think we have an error in the console. Down below. Model doesn't exist. Okay, yeah, this is what you just fixed. So Now, model is actually what holds our data. And what I often do to debug this in the template is basically print out the model property. So if you go in the template, line 6, you can add the tag PRE, there you go, this tag, PRE tab, and then interpolation, and print the model and pipe it through the JSON pipe. So this is what I generally do because model is an object. So we want to pipe it through JSON. And as of this moment, if it refreshes and you start typing something in the model, it should be visible in the, it's not visible. Do we have any errors? In here we don't, in here we do. Let's assign line 23 in your template class. Let's assign it to an empty object. So let's start out with an empty object. But this is basically where we're going to capture our inputs. There you go. So, okay, so now we have a property in our class called model that's always updated with the latest value of whatever somebody passes in. So you can already start to think how to do a login. Well, it's basically pass along whatever is in this.model, and then you should be golden. So maybe we can take a look at how do you folks handle the submit button?
Okay.
And maybe we can make it work with the model property. So we have a thing called submit, and on submit, it says, okay, if this login form is invalid, return. Otherwise, set loading to true and do an await, and it goes to the service. And if login is successful, then we redirect. So the line 83 and 84, you can already probably change this to say this.model.username and this.model.password. And now here comes the thing. Yeah, we set any on top of the screen, but if in case of this login screen, you can type it yourself because you know, like, okay, I'm going to have like a username and password field. And another thing I'd like to point out, we have this login form on line 77. It's kind of nice to have the form to be able to check if it's valid. And this we can still do informally. So if you go back to the template on line 5, we can just pass in our login form directly in here. So you can just say form as a property with the square brackets. Form equals this.login form. Just login form, basically, because you don't need is in the templates. So here we point our form to the same form group. So it's actually using the same form group,
okay,
which means that if it's invalid, any of these fields are invalid, we don't submit.
Okay.
And what we can change is where we use the login form. So at some point in this class, we say this login forms equals new form group, probably in the constructor or in the ng init. There you go, ng init, very good. This we no longer need it because this happens dynamically by formally. Formally figures this all out and does this for us. So we can get rid of this, and then on the top of the component where we define our form group, login form, we can just say this login form is new form group and pass in an empty object.
Like this, new form group with an empty object, like this.
Yep, there you go. And this should make it work. And now we should have the upper part of our form, the first two fields should be the ones we can use to log in. So let's give it a shot, see if this works as expected.
Okay.
Something
valid or invalid?
Something valid. Yeah, I would try something valid and see if this works. Or invalid. I'm also fine with breaking it.
Nothing happened, I think.
Okay, let's maybe add some. So what I think we can go ahead and do, maybe check the other terminal, see if we missed anything here. But No, this all looks good. Let's take a quick look at what we do in the component class. So inside the component class where we handle the submit, let's take a quick look if there's something
here.
Yeah, something here. I'm actually surprised to see, wait, you don't use observables for this kind of stuff? Okay. Might be another nice review and refactor. I'm curious to see if the login method correctly receives the variable. So let's double check that. In line 77, click into the login method, like comment click into the method login, and basically on line 31 add a new line and print username and user passwords just to make sure that we are receiving the expected values.
What? User password.
Yep, awesome.
What?
You were logged in. It looks like you were logged in.
It worked.
Okay.
Okay, it worked, but didn't redirect.
I think I think I know what happened. We use Heroku to have our backend there, so it takes like a minute to load the free server.
Yeah, it falls asleep after a little bit.
Yeah, it was thinking.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. So good to know what it was. Yeah, I have the same with my backends hosting on a serverless provider, and it takes a minute to spin up. So, okay, but in essence, we now refactored the form, and this should still behave the same, but obviously the layout is a bit janky right now because we added this PRE tag and we added more form components. So let's move back to the template. Let's get rid of the pre tag, so we don't have that output, because I think the idea is clear. You basically take the whole form out of the equation. So let's take a quick look. We have on this label field, we took the mat label so we can get rid of line 8. This is something we took care of. We took rid of the line 9 because we do a material input. Line 10, we took care of that. Form control name is something that's handled for you, so you don't need to do that anymore. Autocomplete, set it to username. I think this is a way to tell your browser that it will list other usernames you used in the past, right?
Right. That's it.
I think you can set this autocomplete on the template options as well. Meanwhile, I'm just going to have a quick spy inside our inside the Formly source. And if this doesn't make it behave the same, so that we can, because we still have this input, I think you can get rid of this. So is invalid, so add the class is invalid. This is an interesting one, and another interesting one is the loading you have. So you want to disable the fields if it's loading. We can quickly do that. So we no longer have to have the loading property. So can you search for loading word here in this template, see where it's used besides these two? So it's this one, it's down there. It has a loading here inside the button. Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. And then so it's for the inputs and the button. So the way to do this informally is in the template class inside the submit. What you can do, inside the submit method, in the template class here, what we can do, I think a bit further down. Yeah, there you go. So where we say line 77, this.login, you can actually tell the form group to disable. So this one, we probably want to keep it so that the button gets rendered with this loading indicator. But you can say this.login form .disable. And disable is a method. So you can invoke the method. Perfect. And then once we get back from doing the login, so I think line 84, we want to re-enable it so that if something made a mistake, that the form is at least active again. Enable it. Yeah, there you go. And this should give us the behavior that we expect. So yeah, let's move to the screen back again to the browser. And it looks like, okay, I think this is,
I think it's using this class.
This is because because we broke we removed stuff from the input on line 8, and now it's complaining that we basically do something incorrect. So maybe we can either get rid of it all, just get rid of the whole form field maybe.
Okay.
And I think that you can do the same because the password is the same. We have a met input, type password, form control, autocomplete. That's something we can still do.
Okay. Is there a way to add the class?
Yeah,
there?
Sure. So down template option, one line down. So autocomplete there is like, I think, current password inside in case in line 43 in the class. So that's, yep. Now, the next property, current passwords.
Okay.
The next property next to template option, you can start a new object. So on line 44. And here what we can say is, make a new object and say class names. Or class name, class name, singular. And this takes a string of class names. So you can say here user-input, and this should give it the expected class name. So let's see if this renders it out in the way we expect.
I forgot. Not what I forgot. Property assignment expected. Should it be inside the template?
It should be next to the template expression actually. It looks to be pretty good. Let's get rid of the. Ooh, this doesn't look good at all. Let's get rid of the thing you just added in the login components to see if that does it. That fixes it. Okay, can you just add an empty array, an empty object?
Use class name.
We need a key, obviously. Sorry, we need to add a key. We cannot just add an empty object inside in this line. So the key is going to be, and I think it should be, I think it should be class name right on the root here. So you can just say class name there, give it user input. Now and to work around this, just write this, make a class name property with the string user input. There you go. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. Now, does this look like the form you had? I think the only thing we're missing is that the form you had was like in the middle of the screen.
Yep, something like that.
But maybe we can inspect the element here and see if our user input property got applied, the class got implied here. And
maybe it was some property that we defined somewhere else. I don't think it's important.
Yeah, so there's another thing you can do, which is a good one to know. Inside the template options, in the component, you can add an object called attributes. So inside inside this object, there you go, you can say attributes. This is an object by itself. And here you can just add key value pairs or whatever you want to add. So for instance, class, and add a class of user input to see if this gives the expected output.
Like this?
Yep.
No.
No.
I'm not sure if that user input is the one that says it's centered.
Yeah, that's not the one we're looking. Like alternatively, it might be that user input needs to be redefined a little bit. So it takes into account that there's a new structure, because the structure is not going to be the same between doing it manually.
Yep.
Yeah, just got added to the input directly, right? Okay, so let's not do that, but I think maybe autocomplete should live there. For instance, the one we have on line 34, it might be that that one needs to live inside the attributes, so it gets applied to the real Formally attribute. So this is always a little bit of experimenting where to put the right stuff. So I think you can get rid of line 34 for now, and but please, so you know that this is there. Now, if we can open a terminal, you can make a terminal a bit larger. What I'd like to see is if you do a git diff right now. So in a new terminal, just in a new shell, execute git diff, so that we can take a quick look at the difference in like where we do it. So, okay, this is the installation of the packages. That's not super important. We can get rid of the bootstrap one, but other than that, we import the Formally module and the Formally material module. And at whatever place we use it, we need to import Formally module so it has access to the Formally form component. And I generally abstract around third-party stuff, and Formally is not an exception. So I often have like a shared module, like UI forms or something that makes sense in the app. Just do all the form stuff there, and this is the one you import. Then if we do hit space again, we can take a look at how we actually used it. So I think we can probably get rid of that comment because we don't really use it, but here we go in the login component. So now we see that we deleted these like 11 lines of code in the template. So this is our first input, and the second input, it's in total like 22 lines of code that you can delete by not having to make it explicit, and you can just have this one form.
By one.
And other than some details and like automatically doing the styling, we didn't really miss any functionality. So we can still do checks like is the form enabled or disabled, and we can basically define anything we want. And then here in the login component, we defined our login form just with an empty form group. We define a model and an array of fields. Now, if you look at pure number of lines of code, it's going to be very similar. But I think the benefit is that in this scenario, you just have one JavaScript object, and that defines your whole form. You can create a method that returns these fields. This is often what I end up with in the next step. So I end up with having a helper method that I can just write, give me an input field or give me a password field. And this, what I think, is what the real gain is. So yeah, and this is just Yarnlock doing the things. But this kind of gives an overview. Like it's, I think it's a very small buy-in to get into Formally. It adds like maybe 20 or 30K to your bundle size. But if you then start using it, it doesn't start incrementally adding more and more. So it's just one time a buy-in. And in terms of having to build out your whole forms with their own customization each time, you don't. And this, we can more or less leave it the same. So this is also some of the benefits I see. You don't have to rework your whole app. Every form that works, fine. You can just leave it at this and look at all the new ones and get the new ones in there. Yeah. So what I think we can do is create a form library or get rid of these specific things, because this is nice, but it's also kind of painful that you have to remember exactly where it is. So what we can do, and I'm not sure in the app what would be a great place for this, but is write a form field helper. So maybe somewhere in core, you probably have a core module, core system somewhere, helpers, perfect. So you can say field helper or form helper, however you want to call it. Yep. And what I do here is say export class with the same name, fields helper. And on this class, I add static methods. So you can say static, and you can call the thing, let's call it input. And input takes a key, because this is something we want to be unique for each of the feeds, which is a string. And it takes template options which is optional. And we can type this to formally template options. I think formally template options. There you go. Yeah, formally template options. And then after that, we take an options array, which can be anything. So just an options, which is optional, and that's it. Yeah, and you can make it any, or we can later type it, but for now, let's make it any. This static method returns a formally filled config. So this is what we basically going to abstract out, formally filled config, field singular. Yeah, this is the one. And now we can have the method body, and we can say return. And what we're actually going to return is super similar to what we have on line 25 down. So we're going to say, okay, return an object. And we have the key is just a key. So we can do key, comma, to make the use of the shorthand notation. Then we can say type is input, because this is will always be the type input.
Okay.
And then we can say template options. We can just pass in the same one. So we can do comma here, and we can say options. And this is it. Now inside your login component, on line 24, start a new line. And so outside of this object, basically either before or after the username object. So either go one line down, and yeah, so let's do it right here. Comma. So add a new thing to the formally filled config array. Now we say fields helper.input. There you go, fields helper. I think you need to, yeah, .input. Give it a key of username.
Username.
The username is a string, and copy over line 29 to 35. So everything that you had in template options here, but besides the key. So we don't need the key, we only need the object that got assigned. Yep, there you go. And we paste that in here. So we make a new object and paste it in. There you go. And the last one, this should already be more simple, right? So if we now go back to our login form in the browser, we should say that we have two inputs being rendered. If it's refreshed, there you go. We have the first username and the second username are actually exactly the same. It's the same field, same structure that we define, and they behave the same. The only difference is that they can't have focus, because yeah, two objects cannot have focus at the same time. But if you start typing in one, it will use the same content in the other, and these fields behave exactly the same. So the nice thing about this is if you can move back to the code, like on line 49, what we do, we say, okay, fields helper generate this JSON output, but this JSON structure can literally come from anywhere. So if you want, you can have your Ruby backend send out form definitions. If that's something that makes sense in your app, then that's totally possible, because as of now, it's just a JavaScript structure. Now, there's use cases where it doesn't work always. Like if you have a form input that wants to reach out to an API, for instance, an autocomplete field, or if you want to do a check if a username is available or something in the registration stream. But yeah, you can get rid of this one and just do the methods. And let's quickly go to the formally fields helper, copy that whole line 4 down, so the whole static method, copy it, and now paste it again. And now password. So let's call it line 17. Let's call it password. Now what we actually want to do with password, we want to be able to do exactly the same, but we want to provide a different type inside template options. So on line 25, instead of passing template options right away, what we want to do is assign this to an object. So semicolon at the end, and then this a new object, and then destructured template options. So whatever gets passed in, and then before this destructure, so between 25 and 26, add a new line. So right before 26, and what we want to say, at least type will always be password here. And if we take a look at the login component, this is line 32 that we take a hold of. So actually, you're making some sort of preset form. You take a form definition, you preset it with, you know what, password. Maybe it makes sense in your app to say, you know what, if we render out a password fields, we always want to have the label contraseña. So you can pass it in here as well. And you can say, you know what, for a password field, I always want the min length to be 8 or something. So you can say label contraseña, and you can say min length. Minimum length needs to be 8. There you go. And then if we then go back to our template login component, we can say forms fields helper.password. And Alex Butera has a great question. Why before destructure and not after? And this has to do with the logical order. So if you do it, if we destructure before, we will always hard override it, which for the type password makes sense. But for the label, you maybe want to have like a second label that says verified password. So by default, your password label will always be password. But in some cases, if you want to render to, you want to be able to override the label. So you can play a little bit with the defaults and non-defaults. But yeah, so you used formally helper password. You pass in the key, which is how it's identified, and then you pass in the options. Now from line 30 down, I think most of these can live actually in your template. So let's see, we have let's render this out, see how it works. So because we can get rid of label, I think. Okay, so we have to take a look at the order of the fields, and you can get rid of the first definition in the fields array. So we can get rid of these things. Now, I see that both have appearance outline. So let's move that into line in the fields helper, line 12. Basically do the same thing. Line 12, add an object into options and set appearance outline and the destructure the rest of the options. And so required is good to have it like a special one. Yeah, I think this is basically it. But now you make, and you don't need to do this on line 31 either, because, or you do need to do it. Yep. Okay, we're gonna, but you can already see that you can do more refactoring, because like right here on line 25, what we actually do is we provide template options. So we can actually call into the input above if we want and reuse the same one.
I didn't get that part.
Yeah, not just leave it like this, because there's generally these optimizations go in a few steps. So you start by pulling them out into methods, and then you see like, oh, I got a ton of duplication. Actually, I can make one meta field that just takes whatever config.
Yep. Okay. Yep. That's right.
But I think if you look at line 25 down, this is a tremendous cleanup, and it's a way more expressive way to say, this is how I want my form to behave. And Chow, my buddy Chow, hey Chow, good to see you here, says, shouldn't fields helper password always return template option type as password? Yes, I think you can agree. So I think you can move line 29 inside the fields helper down to below 33. So that it at least always has type password. I think that's a great option. But you can see like, okay, which properties do I want to be able to override and which don't? So maybe minimum length is also something that you always want to force minimum length. Like we're not going to have a password field that accepts four characters. That's always invalid. So now from here on out, you're actually moved your form definition to JavaScript. So from here on out, it's up to your creativity on how to do this. We have two static methods, but these static methods can also be dynamic methods, and you can generate this and you can start passing in other variables so that your form fields make sense. But what I think is the big benefit and the big win is that you no longer have to worry about the templates each and every time you use a field.
So probably I can use this same method in most of my forms along the app, right?
Yeah, and I have actually a field helper that has a ton of these fields already prepared, because we all in all apps we have an input and we have text area and checkbox, but we have more fancy inputs like input password, input email, input number.
Right.
These are all prefixed. So I'll share that with you afterwards, or we can look at it right away and you can copy it in if you like. But let me see. And Chow also mentions a great thing. Talk about testability. Yes. I need to show it here.
Right.
That I think is also an important part, because you can test these form definitions just as any other JavaScript code. So you can just make sure that this shape always returns whatever you expect, without having to actually build out the form and test it. And this is the thing. Yeah, you can have static password reuse. This one, I'm going to pop open my gist, because I have an example that I created for another person I was helping with this. Formhelper.ts. I'm going to share it in private chat, so maybe Diego, you can open it inside the browser.
Okay.
And what we can look at here, and if you bump up this font size a little bit, yeah, awesome. So let's ignore map. Map is not really important right now, but let's go to line 22, I think it is, public static field. So what I did, like, this is my base field. This doesn't have any field knowledge. It doesn't even have an input type. It doesn't need to know what type. So this is basically an abstraction of formally field config. Now, in line 36, you can see that I actually reuse fields here and say, I want to make an input field, pass it in the key, template options, and options. And then for email, we say, okay, email needs to be type email, label email, and I'm going to add some default validators. We didn't check validators yet, which probably is another episode altogether. But you can define validation by type. And then one more down is the password field, the one that we basically just recreated. Here you go. And I say, okay, password, always type password, always minimum length, always required, and always have a label, which I do allow for overriding. Now then we have number, and there's a bunch more fields that you have here. So this should be something you can just copy this class body, paste it in your forms helper, and you have a ton of fields just available for use. From here on out, it's just the same old, same old. So
yep.
Yeah, and then rating, for instance, rating is very custom, right? We don't have an HTML native rating component. So if you would pop this in right now and you would use it, Formally will say, I don't know how to render a rating field. So you need to then provide it in the Formally config. So, and let's take a small look at the UI form component, which is the second file I shared in this gist. So if you scroll down a little bit.
Right, this one.
Yeah, so what I do here is wrap around Formally form. And Formally form is the one that we use directly. And you see we pass in fields just like we did in your example. We pass in the form, the model. It also supports options, which is not really interesting at this point. It's for more advanced stuff. What I also do here on line 8 is already create a form, so you don't have to repeat that piece of code. It handles the submit, and it sends it out as an action. So on line 24, we define an output, which is called action. It also handles some edge cases. So on line 11, you see that there's a button, but it has style display none. So it's a hidden button. And this one makes sure that if you're inside an input and you hit enter, that the form will trigger a submit. This is something that by default doesn't work in Formally. So I definitely recommend adding something like this to the app and using something like this. It has a few edge cases. There's also something on line 29. We use the builder.build form. This has something to do if you dynamically push new field definitions, or if you change your field definition, that formally makes sure that it all works together.
Wow, this is great.
Yeah, curious to hear your opinion. This is great. Natalia, what do you think?
I like how can we remove a lot of code in the template, and how can we also do all of this configuration in a helper to reuse the same or the information that is repetitive through the application. I like it.
Yeah, I think these two go hand in hand, right? So you basically take away all the declarative stuff, the imperative stuff actually you have in the template, and you take it all out and make JavaScript objects from it. Yeah.
Right. When do you plan to replace reactive forms with Formly, please?
Well, actually doing this show is one effort to make people aware that this exists, and that I 100% think this is the best way to do forms in Angular. I think this beats doing reactive forms manually. I really see reactive forms as a low-level API. It's great. It's awesome that it exists, and it hurts me to see everybody write their own forms. You missed a big opportunity of using a library. So this is one of the reasons I frankly started it, and I'm going to do the same in review and refactor. I'm going to do series on how I use NX. So if at one point you think we want to use NX for this project, feel free to be part again. And also GraphQL, because a lot of people use GraphQL, but they don't use code generation, which is another huge saver in lines of code, basically making your app more reusable at the point. Because what I really like is, like, you have this login component, right? And the component itself, if we look at the template, there's a logo, there's a bunch of fields, and there's a button. But there's not a lot of things that actually make this specific to your login form. Now, if you think about a register form versus a login form, there's basically two different things. You have different set of fields and you have different handling, but all the other stuff is actually the same. You want these things to look super similar. You want just the fields to change. Okay, maybe the buttons down below. Now, if you look at this login component, you can probably already see, like, hey, but now having the uniqueness of this login is only in the fields array and how we handle this unsubmit. So which also makes you realize, like, okay, we can easily pull this one out. And I see you in login component line 1, you already have like an app auth layout component. So what you could do is, let's have this app auth layout just accept an array of fields, and send out a submit output. Like, what happens if we do the submit? And then the rest can all live inside this layout component, right? So these are things, I think it really lets you think differently about how to structure your components and what makes them unique and what is the common use case, so where is room for creating abstraction, if that makes sense. Yeah, cool. So
Nice.
So one thing I'm curious about, so we're in 1 hour. I have like the whole afternoon time. I'm not sure how you guys are doing on time. Or if you want to look what's one interesting thing, maybe we can look at a place where you have a drop down or a select box.
Okay, sure.
And Alex says, I added a repeat to this. This is very useful for dynamic forms where user can add and remove inputs. So this might be a second one we can take care of. And now the backend needs to wake up.
Yeah.
And
No?
maybe a refresh already does it. To refresh in the browser.
It's using HMR.
Right.
Yeah.
There we go.
So put down. Where do we have a put down? Creating a student here.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, cool. So the new student screen. Let's take a second on how we implemented this grade field.
Natalia, do you know where is that? create a student. Must be this one.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So, okay, again, big list, and it's pretty repetitive. So few things that stand out here. I love how gender is prefixed to female, by the way. That's good. And by the way, Natalia is our first female on the show, so that's awesome. Here we say, and let's look at the grade field, grado, and we can see, here you go. Okay, grado. Okay, so here you have an array of levels. And we make that a levels array. Let's see how that is. That's okay. Level, have an interface level array. And do these come from an API, or are these hard coded?
This comes from the API.
Okay, cool. So instead of doing the subscribe, because one of the things that you do, and you're probably aware, but there's something in the back of the head. I know it works like this for me. Like actually, you need to handle the unsubscribe to make sure it works well. It might be for a one-hit API, this might not be needed, because if it's just an HTTP call, it will complete. But it's a bit of it's getting a bit of an anti-pattern to use .subscribe right away. So one of the things that formally allows you to do is have a drop-down actually subscribe to get its options, and it will handle the subscribe, which also the unsubscribe, which means at the moment the form gets destroyed, you no longer have this subscription open and no memory leak. So what we can quickly do.
It handles the unsubscribe by default?
Yes, it does it. Wow. It does the right thing for you. So you can just say, okay, this is the observable, which are my options, and then leave it like that.
Nice.
So if we can take a look at it right now and add a field with just this drop down, probably. So we don't have to re-implement it all because that's very repetitive. But if we scroll all the way up to this component class, where we define the properties, let's line 21, let's add a fields array again.
What is the type of that?
Formerly field config. Yep, an array of that. And inside here, you can just say fields helper, I think is what you called it. So you don't need to build your own object. You can just, you can get rid of you're adding it as an object property. So you can get rid of line 23 and 25. There you go, fields helper. There you go, dot. Now this is a select box. So we don't have that right here. We can either add it or we can do it manually. Let's add an object. You want to add it?
No.
Let's just add an object, give a key grade.
Great.
So now I think we can get rid of the fields helper equal.
Right. Of course.
Yeah, so we can say key is great. So the literal word key, this is super confusing. Yeah, no, the key has the word great, and then we can have the type is select. Now this select is just looking at, okay, formally material, give me a select. Now template options, here we can add template options and we can add an options key. And the options key, this takes an observable. So we can say, and we need to go back down to see how we actually got these levels so that we use the same ones. So I think this is the subject queries that get levels. This is the one thing that we want to use. So the nice thing is we also no longer need to use a local variable for this. So this is another big cleanup because this is a super common pattern. We subscribe to a list of options and this needs to be timed well. So this query, this subject queries that get levels is the one we can pass into our form definition directly. So let's pass that one in. And I'm curious why it's a red squiggly line. Okay, we need to make a pipe here because we want to get some data. So we can add a pipe to the get levels dot pipe and take a map. So the map operator.
After that?
Now inside pipe, you can do map and import this one from there, from where it suggests. Yep. And map takes an arrow function, which I generally do. No, you were right the first time. So you have parentheses right after the map word. And then the arrow function, I generally call it res, like res. Yeah, there you go. Res inside the parentheses. And I think we can return res.something. Return res.data dot, and then see whatever gets data.levels. Okay, cool. So res.data.levels. Now, this should render out without issues because now we at least get back an array. But it's very unlikely that the levels array has the shape that it gets expected by Formally, because Formally expects an array of label value pairs. And you most likely have like ID and label or something. So what you want to do right on this level is say .map. Now we're going to use JavaScript map. And we're going to take a level. And we're going to return an object. Return an object, yep, with the key label is level dot. And let's see what that gives us.
The key?
No, this was good. You were right. The key is called label. Level dot something. Level dot name maybe. Or level dot number. What is the display element you want to show? Is this the number? No, you want to have get string level. Okay, we have get string level. So let's invoke get string level here. So you want to say get string level. This dot get string level, pass in level ID. And we want to return a value, which is the level ID. Value is level.id. And this should give us an object if we did it all right. Let's get string level. Does it exist?
It's not what?
It's not parentheses.
It's an method.
It's not a method.
Like this?
Looks like this should be it. Now, one thing I always do is on line 30 is set a question mark. So the Elvis operator. So question mark dot data, question mark dot levels. So just to access them safely, because like you define this on a very early stage in the component lifecycle. So it might be that this doesn't work directly. It looks like line 39 has a, no, that looks to be right. That was just ESLint. Unexpected block statement. Yeah, so your editor suggests to not use return statements, but use like implicit returns. So you can get rid of the return if you also get rid of the parentheses and also like there you go. And probably it will say the same now. Oh no, looks like this works.
Linter is happy this time.
But there's a semicolon it's not happy about on line 35, I think.
Why?
Yeah, you need to get rid of the semicolon, I think, on 35. Because we are inside the pipe. Yeah, there you go. And now it says, oh, you need to block statement, you need to return a directory. So this is basically your...
I don't like that linter.
So what you can do here is do the parentheses, but wrap it in parentheses. So this object that you return.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. And that also needs one on line 33. Get rid of the semicolon again. I don't like semicolons for this reason. It can make life so much difficult. But yeah, to each their own flavor.
Okay, we're there.
Cool, we're there. Okay, awesome. So in the template right now, what we can then do inside create student is basically same old. So formally form. Just I pop it just somewhere on the top, so we at least sure that we can show it. So inside here we can say formally dash form and pass in our fields, and that should be enough. Fields equals fields, and this should be enough. But we need to make sure that we import formally module so it has access to it.
Right. No, it's not here. It's here.
Yeah. Awesome. And then this should auto subscribe to our grados. So I'm curious if it's not rendering.
Let's reload.
Yep, and let's make sure that our
probably because I changed the model. I have to.
Yeah, it might not pick it up. HMR is awesome, but it's also not flawless.
Yep.
So cool. So this will show us how to do this this very common pattern where you basically want to select. Now, this the little code that we added, basically the pipe statement on line 29, all the way down to line like 36 or 37, just this all operations, I generally move this into my service. So instead of having this.subject queries.get levels, I say this.subject queries get level options. So again, I hide it all the way out of where I use it because it's not really relevant. We just want to get the set of options for this level. And this makes your components way smaller, which makes them in turn better manageable, and like you improve the reusability and the testability.
That's right. A lot of code to clean here.
Yeah, there's a big opportunity, and I've worked with quite a lot of teams building in formally into their apps. Most of the teams are super happy, and in order for, yeah, there you go. Click, and now, okay, we have a map of undefined. So this is probably one more question mark operator that we need to add. So I think rest.levels.map. We only have one map. Can you, above this, like 30, add a new line above 30 and say tap and TAP, which also gets imported from here. Yep. And we do the same thing, but with, yep, get it from there, and res, and then console log res, just to see, take a small peek at what we do, and add a comma. We need to add a comma at the end of the tab statement. There you go. Data seems to be undefined. Interesting. And in Grado, it does charge. Yep. Yeah, this might be because of the async await that's in there. I think the get levels doesn't return the observable right away, does it? Ah, this actually does do the value changes.
But yeah, I think that this GraphQL part is rendered after something like.
Yeah, it might be, for instance, that your token is set afterwards. So maybe we can look at the network tab for a second to see if we can see the actual call to get the levels.
After this subscribe is.
Okay, yeah. Now that's also a, let's see, we do get levels back here. Yeah, but it's probably a timing issue. Now, one of the things you can do, because this, ideally it shouldn't happen, but life is not always perfect, as we know. So one of the things that I've been working with is basically moving your field assignment inside ng on init. So basically say on init, happen this, happen that, And now this dot fields equals, and then put your fields definition there. So the quick way to do this is take whatever we put inside here, take the whole object basically. Yep. Don't assign fields, or empty, either empty or don't assign, it doesn't really matter. And then in your ng init say this dot fields equals, there you go.
Don't do this at home.
Yeah. Okay, still cannot read map of undefined. So okay, this might be some other issue. I'm not sure if it really makes a lot of sense to figure it out right now, but this I guess this is a race condition. I can hardly think of anything else. What I am interested about is that it says cannot read map of undefined, but this is something that we don't really call this map because we safely access our map. So this might also be something that's inside form that it needs to, inside formally it needs to use this one. Yeah. But yeah, so this is one way to do our options. There's a few more other ways you can get around this, but I think the baseline is you can subscribe to this directly. So this is something you probably want to use inside your apps. And yeah, there's a few more things we could look at, but I think the global idea is quite clear. And so what I did with most teams, because some people are super happy and they dive into it directly and they build everything, and other people are like a bit more cautious. I generally advise them, like, give every person like 3 or 4 forms that they can convert, and just do it along. Like each week, try to do 3 or 2 forms. Everybody does a form. If you're a team of 3 people, everybody takes 1 form, you divide them, and then you can send PR, see how everybody does it, and this gives you more experience with it. Right. But yeah, feel free to send questions or comments if you have anything about these forms, or if you want me to hop on a call, I'm happy to do it. I also do content in Spanish, so we might even look at it and do the same in Spanish. I'm not sure if that's maybe somewhere in New Year we can look at that.
Sure, why not?
But yeah, do you think it's something you're going to use in this app?
I like it. We have all type of forms with different crazy objects inside, but I think we can make this work easier.
Cool. How about you, Natalia? I see you nodding yes.
I'm definitely yes.
Cool.
I like how this, if we can complete this subject query, these get levels and bring the information here instead of subscribing the queries down there, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. I think that's it's probably better design. And and I think another thing, we should try and get rid of async awaits here, because this is not very Angular-ish. This is not idiomatic Angular, if you want to say. So, okay, cool. I think with that, it's a wrap for today's episode. It was awesome to have you here. I always praise people. I think it's a brave movement if you want to show other people your code. There's a lot of people that are always afraid to share code and share screen. It's awesome that you did it. I would love to have you back sometime. Maybe we can look at the GraphQL code gen, because I think you did some async versus promise things. Maybe we can get rid of the awaits and do it all observable based.
Natalia is the great master of GraphQL here.
Cool. Let's do one somewhere in the New Year. Let's look at GraphQL. I hope to have a lot of more review and refactors. And for those of you watching, if you have any things you'd like to see me cover, any other topics, any things I missed, please let me know on Twitter or on the comments in YouTube. And with that, I think we can call it a wrap for today. Thank you so much, Natalia and Diego, for joining me. And
thanks to you for inviting us.
Yeah,
super.
Thank you very much.
It was awesome. Cheers. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a nice evening.